All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a crisis that honestly put the entire global economy on edge. We're digging into the day the world's most critical shipping lane just shut down. Okay, so let's set the scene. The date is February 28th, 2026. This wasn't just another day on the calendar. Nope. This was the day that sent these massive, immediate shockwaves through, well, everything. Financial markets, the energy sector, you name it. So, to really get a grip on what happened, and more importantly, why it matters to all of us, we're going to break it down into these 5 parts. Let's start right at the beginning. Okay, so what actually went down that day in late February? I mean, how does one of the busiest, most important waterways on the entire planet just stop? Well, first things first, this was no accident. It wasn't some ship getting stuck. This was a direct, calculated military move. Here's what happened. The U.S. and Israel conducted joint strikes on Iran. And in response, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, basically said, that's it, and declared passage through the strait not allowed. Just like that, they shut it down, stopping all commercial ships dead in their tracks. Now, to really wrap your head around how big of a deal this was, you've got to understand why this one tiny-looking stretch of water is just so vital. It's not just another shipping lane, it's the shipping lane. Okay, look at it this way. The Strait of Hormuz is the only way for ships to get from the Persian Gulf out into the open ocean, period. And at its skinniest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. That geography right there, it creates this incredible, almost scary dependency for so many countries and really for the entire global economy. Get this, a full 25%. That's a quarter of all the world's oil that's moved by sea. It all has to squeeze through this one single strait. We're talking about the lifeblood of economies from Europe all the way to Asia. It's a staggering amount of the world's energy, all funneling through one very, very vulnerable choke point. And if you think the oil numbers are big, let's talk about money. The total value of trade passing through here every year, it's estimated at $1.2 trillion. So when it closes, it's not just a disruption. It's like turning off a $1 trillion tap. But, it's not just about fuel for our cars. It goes deeper. This strait is also the highway for about a third of the entire world's seaborne fertilizers. And that, well, as we're about to see, that has huge, huge consequences for what ends up on our plates. Right, so a crisis this big doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's never that simple, is it? This was actually the end result of a really clear and, frankly, really fast chain of events that kept getting worse and worse. So if you look at the timeline, you can see exactly how we got here. Tensions were already simmering from an air conflict back in 2025. Then, what happens? The big nuclear talks in Geneva, they completely fall apart. And that failure of diplomacy, that's what really set the stage for the military strikes on February 28th. And the retaliation from Iran, it wasn't a week later or a day later, it was immediate. The same day. The second that strait was declared not allowed for passage, the economic fallout was instant and it was severe. And I'm not talking about some 5-year forecast here. We're talking about costs exploding, literally overnight. The first thing to go haywire? Insurance. You see, the cost for a single ship to get what's called war risk insurance for just one trip through that area, it went from a tiny fraction of a percent of its value to a whopping 5%. For most shipping companies, that made trying to go through there completely unaffordable. And to put that 5% into real-world numbers, let's say you have a typical oil tanker worth about $100 million. That insurance premium, it just jumped to $5 million for one trip. It's just mind-boggling. And beyond all the dollars and cents, we absolutely cannot forget the human cost. This wasn't just a line on a map anymore. It was an active conflict zone. At least 12 merchant ships got damaged. And tragically, real people, seafarers, port workers, they lost their lives. And this is where the story gets a lot bigger than just oil prices. The ripple effects of this shutdown spread all the way through our global supply chains, and in ways that affect pretty much everyone, even if you live thousands of miles away. Yeah, as the folks at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace pointed out, experts saw this right away. They said the biggest worry wasn't just about filling up our cars. It was about filling up our grocery carts. They were warning of a potential full-blown global food crisis. And here's the connection. Remember we talked about those fertilizers? About a third of the world's supply? With that supply chain just gone, farmers, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, were staring down a massive shortage right when they needed to plant their crops. The math here is scarily simple. No fertilizer means smaller harvests. Smaller harvests mean higher food prices. And those prices, they eventually hit all of us, right at the dinner table. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the Strait of Hormuz crisis in 2026 was more than just a regional conflict. It was a massive, real-world stress test for our interconnected world. And it really leaves us with one pretty tough question to chew on. Just how resilient, or how fragile, are these global systems that we all rely on every single day?